this past weekend. There was, as you know, an Israeli hostage release, and the hostage release was all over the news. It was all over the why. You couldn't log on to social media. You couldn't watch any kind of international programming and not see the news about um, this hostage release. And the hostage release was framed as a day or a moment of celebration, that four hostages were courageously rescued from the Nusrat refugee camp. The names, of course, were Noah Argamani, Almagmer Jan, Algarmir Jan, Andrei Kozlov, and Shlomi Ziv. These were four people who were at the Nova Music Festival on October 7th. They were abducted, they were kidnapped, they were captured. However, whatever word you want to use, I'm not trying to be coy here, right? They got kidnapped. It's a war crime. It's an act of war. It's a violation of the rules of war. Excuse me. It's all the things, right? I have no defense of capturing innocent people, but at the end of the day, they were captured, and Israel engaged in a somewhat surprise operation in the Nusrat refugee camp inside of Gaza to rescue these four people. Um, and while we're looking at images of people hugging and people celebrating and all over Israel, all over the diaspora, people saying, "Oh my God, what a great the IDF, go IDF for saving the people, and go people for being saved." Look, I get it. I understand why um, people are celebrating. I'd celebrate too if someone I loved were free. But what's at stake here? That's the part of the story that's not told. When those four were killed, Israel declared that the operation was precise, that it was sharp, and that it was relatively safe. Right? They told again these heroic stories of how it happened, how it was going to happen, uh, and we were supposed to see it again as an act of precision, of military precision by the world's most moral army. And of course, Israel announced that fewer than 100 people died in this mission. And they also told the story of how they were backing down Hamas and how they were fighting against Hamas and the operatives on the ground. They basically told a story that made it seem as if in the heroic saving of these innocent people, they had to fight their way out. And even still, they only managed to kill less than 100 people. It's a pretty damn impressive story. It's a pretty damn impressive story. Here's the problem. Story ain't true. It's not what happened at all. It's not even close to what happened at all. 274 people were killed. 274 people were killed in this in this military mission. Um, Countless stories have emerged now from Palestinians on the ground. I've spoken to Palestinians on the ground. I've read the accounts of other Palestinians on the ground. Um, I've seen the devastation. I mean, you can look literally at the devastation in the Nusrat camp. Look at the rubble on the ground. Look at the buildings that have been collapsed, and listen to the people who are talking about all the death that has occurred. And these numbers, by the way, of 274. They come from the Gazan Health Ministry. I'm going to say it again because I have to say it all the time. The Gazan Health Ministry has been accurate. The Gazan Health Ministry has not overstated how many people have died. The Gazan Health Ministry historically has been within 4% of the global community. It's been right on the money with international bodies. It's been on the money with Israel's own numbers. There's no reason to believe that the Gazan Health Ministry has lied about the numbers. It's just important to say that, because now all of a sudden, whenever you say a number, they say, well, how do you know Hamas gave you the numbers? And it's like, well, I could say the same thing about the IDF, quite frankly. But getting beyond the tit for tat is just historically the data is there, and the Gaza Health Ministry gets it right more often than not. And Hamas, particularly the military wing of Hamas, doesn't operate doesn't operate the health ministry. They're not they're running the body counts. So that's also another important piece to think about as we talk about it. All that said, this is ugly. When you look at who was killed and you look at how they were killed, when you look at the indiscriminate shooting, when you look at the mothers who say that their babies were killed with their hands up or they were killed unarmed, this is what we're afraid of as a global community. People say, yeah, but there were hostages. You cannot kill 247 people, innocent people, civilians, to rescue 4 hostages. You just can't. Israel sees this as a day of, or a moment of celebration, but also a day of national rebranding. You know, the Israeli military was looking like it was bungling this. The Israeli military was not getting support because of its cruelty and its brazen sort of disregard of international law and order. But this was an opportunity to look heroic. We went in and we saved 4 people. And of course, they focus on Noah Argamani. And I think there's a photo somewhere, you know, of Noah Argamani hugging her dad. And it's like, oh, well, look at this. You know, it makes sense, right? She was the woman of the 4, you know, women being captured. We always talk about women and children. It's a little patriarchal and troublesome how we talk about women and link them to the children. But no one should be locking up women and children. No one should be harming women and children. No one should be kidnapping women and children. So the idea of Noah Argamani being the kind of icon of all this, not just of the 4, but of the whole crisis, kind of makes sense. It's a young 26-year-old girl who was at a music concert and now she's kidnapped. I mean, I have daughters. I would be terrified of that happening. I'd be all the things. And they keep talking about the surgical operation of this. They're trying to redeem Israel. But then you go to Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital, which is in Deir el-Belah, a nearby town. And that's when you start to see wounded people, Palestinians. You start to see dead people, Palestinians. And they're the victims, the mass casualties. Because remember, 274 killed, 700 are wounded. 64 children were killed. 64 children were killed. 57 women were killed. 57 women. So of the 274, 121 of the 274 were women and children. The streets were filled with dead bodies. If the roles were reversed, if there were 4 Palestinians that were kidnapped and 200 Israelis, including over 120 children, were killed, Israeli children, do you think we'd say this is a moral plan? Do you think we'd say that this is okay? Do you think the world would be approving this or applauding this or talking about this as a hero's tale? Of course not. But the problem is we continue to see Palestinians as disposable. We continue to see Palestinians as replaceable. We don't see them as human. And because we don't see them as human, when 274 of them die, and all we can talk about is the 4 Israelis who lived, it's just another index. It's just another piece of evidence of just how indifferent we are to their misery and their suffering. This cannot hold. This cannot stand. This is not who we should be. This is not who we can be sustainably as a world. I don't expect anything different from the Israeli military or the Israeli government, but I expect us as a global community to respond differently.